Greetings from the United Nations headquarters in New York. I'm Dan Thomas, Chief of Communications at the UN Global Compact. Today, the UN Global Compact Academy is pleased to host this special briefing on the Secretary-General's Climate Action Summit and the road ahead to COP25, taking place this year in Madrid. COPs are the annual climate change negotiations convened by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And the Academy is an online platform designed to provide participating companies of the Global Compact with the knowledge and skills they need to meet their sustainability objectives and achieve long-term growth by contributing to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Today's session is part of our Open Influencers series, where we bring together prominent leaders from the United Nations and business who together are shaping the sustainability agenda. Today, our panellists will reflect on the outcomes of the Climate Action Summit and look at next steps, highlighting ways that the private sector and non-state actors can best continue to contribute to shaping the global climate agenda. I'm delighted to be joined here today by the UN Secretary-General's Special Envoy for the Climate Action Summit, Ambassador Luis Alfonso de Alba. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And Lise Kingo, the CEO and Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact. On the line from Madrid is Carlos Salle, the Senior Vice President of Energy Policies and Climate Change at Iberdrola. Thank you for joining us live from Spain. We were hoping to be joined by Gonzalo Munoz, the high-level champion for COP25, but unfortunately he had to drop out at short notice. In just a minute, we'll hear about what happened at the Climate Action Summit in New York this past September and update you on further engagement opportunities. We'll also be answering your questions live, so please submit them anytime using the Q&A feature on the Zoom platform. Thank you to those who already submitted questions. We've incorporated many of those into today's discussion. And so without further ado, I'd like to ask you, Ambassador, tell us a bit about the Climate Action Summit in September. What were the main political outcomes?
Well, I think the most important outcome is the fact that the Secretary General has been able to convene a high-level representation from all sectors and all stakeholders. First of all, to take stock of the gravity of the situation and the urgency to act, but also to identify the solutions. I think raising awareness was also very much helped by the youth movement, and we need to pay tribute to them, to the strikes on the streets on Friday, and the fact that a number of non-state actors actively engage into the preparation. This was not an event, a summit of one day. It is a process. It is a process of building partnerships, and I think in that sense it was very successful.
Tell us a little bit more about the youth energy that the young people brought. That was something that the media in particular really picked up on, didn't it?
Yes, well, I think it was very important. The manner in which they have raised awareness worldwide, many activities developing in hundreds of countries, was impressive. But we also provide a space within the United Nations for them, and we organized the first ever youth summit in the premises of the UN. And it was extremely useful because they had the opportunity not only to send messages and an urgent call for action to governments and other stakeholders, but they were also able to commit themselves to do things on a daily basis that will help fighting climate change. So it was a meeting on which they interact between themselves, they interact with the governmental representation, with non-governmental representation. It was an intergenerational dialogue, the one we witnessed, and their contributions were also showcased at the opening of the summit. They had a dialogue with the Secretary General. Greta Thunberg was a very prominent figure in that dialogue, and she sent very strong messages that we all listened very carefully.
Thank you. And Lise Kingo, the private sector came to the Climate Action Summit in a big way, didn't they? Tell us about that, how they came and what they brought to the Climate Action Summit.
The private sector, the business sector, were very interested in the COP and came to the UN with many different things. good examples, good cases that were presented together with other stakeholder alliances. And in particular, I feel a very strong call to action in joining the 1.5 campaign, signing up to setting science-based targets aligned with a 1.5 scenario within the next couple of years. I felt that was a very strong commitment by companies that are basically taking a leap into the unknown, because it's a very ambitious commitment that will take breakthrough innovation for any company to achieve. So we had a great celebration of the 87 companies that signed up at the summit. Today we have close to 120 companies that have signed. We have just more than 20 new companies from Iberia that signed last week, and we are gathering more momentum towards the COP25 in Spain. So the whole idea is to set a new normal for what we hope companies will aim for going forward in terms of becoming net zero by 2030. So it's sending a very important signal that we are reaching a tipping point for what climate action looks like. And I meet many companies that are very aware that this is, of course, part of running a responsible business, but it's also part to be an efficient business. And the next couple of decades, the climate transformation and the global goals as such is probably the biggest business opportunity for businesses. So there's also a huge business interest in joining a 1.5 scenario and contributing to the energy transition. The new climate economy has estimated that there's a $26 trillion upside for the global GDP in pushing on with this energy transition, and more than 65 million jobs across the world to be derived from this. So many companies has understood the combination of being responsible and of doing breakthrough innovation to really optimize their business model and their business perspectives.
And it's not an easy commitment to make, is it? I mean, it's a particularly ambitious commitment to publicly make. So what does it mean for companies to make that commitment?
Well, it is a big commitment. I mean, first of all, it's a tall challenge. It's a very tall challenge. Next, it has to be documented by the science-based targets methodology, which requires significant data, significant analysis, and target setting in the company. So it was very interesting to speak to many of the new companies that just joined in Spain and Portugal, because some of these companies are also small companies, but they actually take the effort of setting up the science-based targets because they want to build their business on the new climate economy, and they want to do this right from the start. So we see both very large multinational companies, but also smaller companies joining. And in all the companies, I think it's a common denominator that employees are very proud that, you know, my company is joining the 1.5 campaign, Our Common Future. It's a very important part of building, you know, the momentum and the engagement for a company. And it's clearly being noticed by the financial community, by the investment community as well, that are becoming more and more, how should I say, committed and engaged in the climate agenda as well. We see the TCFD becoming more and more mainstream. So, I mean, there's no doubt that all stakeholders are convening towards an energy transition. And as the Secretary General likes to say, the climate train has left the station. This is rolling now. I mean, make sure to get on the train and don't end up on the bandwagon.
Don't get left behind.
Exactly.
Ambassador Alba, what other examples of private sector engagement did you see coming out of the Climate Action Summit?
Well, let me start by telling you that it was quite a different summit from previous one, because building partnerships was a priority for us. And the participation of the business sector and other non-state actors was extraordinary. We were not looking into a number of participants or a number of proposals to be presented, but to a selection of the best and building coalitions between governmental and non-governmental actors. We end up having in a single setting 60 governmental participants and 30 non-governmental participants joining, preparing initiatives, also jointly. And in that sense, I think it was an exercise that needs to be continued and has a follow-up. Among the proposals, we identify roughly 20 of them. There are some which are very significant because they have a transformational impact and a scale that is going to be important. We saw movement from the private sector, which is quite important, not only on energy transition and renewables, but also on sectors which are big emitters, hard-to-abate sectors, the cement industry, the shipping industry, just to mention a few examples. We saw movement on the agribusiness, which is very important. Nature-based solutions has taken a very important stage into the set of solutions that we can tackle to deal with the question. There are many examples. I don't want to be exhaustive, but I want to invite our viewers to do the follow-up of these initiatives, because this is also something which is unique from this summit. The summit doesn't end on the 23rd of September. It will have a follow-up. The first stop is going to be in Madrid at the time we meet for the COP25. Right. And certainly from there, we will need to develop a plan until COP26, which is the moment on which all member states and other actors need to come with enhanced ambition. We need to raise the ambition urgently. We need to be in line, as Lise was mentioning, with the scientific goal of 1.5. And I think that has also been an achievement of the summit. Everybody is already looking into that science-based target as the only one we can follow.
So encouraging news, in other words, that there is momentum. The private sector is stepping up. Carlos Salle, you're on the line from Madrid. Thank you for joining us. Tell us about the climate summit from your point of view. You stepped up as a company. Tell us what you brought to New York at the Climate Action Summit.
Well, first of all, good morning, everybody.
That's very encouraging. There's a lot there that you mentioned. But one of the things that Mr. Salle mentioned was really the sort of the death of coal as a in use. I mean, did you get a sense at the Climate Action Summit that signal was going out into the world and that the private sector was picking that up?
Well, let me start by recognizing that it was the Secretary General who made the very strong call in the middle of the year for not to build new coal plants after 2020, to reduce the subsidies to fossil fuels, and to tax pollution and not the people.
Right.
And this has got a very positive response. More than 30 countries came for the summit already with plans to abandon coal, and we are going to continue to work on all this. But they need a transition, they need alternatives.
Right.
And I think it is quite important for the business community as well as for the governments to start looking into the ways in which we can help those transitions. And I'm thinking particularly in countries which have a high level of emissions because of coal plants, in Asia, in Africa particularly.
And Mr. Salle, you also mentioned the 1.5 campaign which you joined. Just tell us how hard was it for a company like yours to make that ambitious commitment?
Well, I have to say that for us, all this decarbonization process revolution, like is reducing this footprint in all our value chain. Why? Because, for instance, we could have a lot of intention to decarbonize our business model, but in some countries we can have the problem that the administration don't allow us to close some plant, for instance, a fossil plant. So we have to convince also the administration that the regulation allows the decarbonization of the actor. Or for instance, maybe in our value chain we could help all the suppliers to declare in their administration, the regulators, to develop some regulation also to help them to make this decarbonization, because if not, at the end you have the problem of allowing people with
Yeah. So, Ambassador de Alba, the next 14 months are going to be critical, as we go through COP25 and then we build towards COP26 in Glasgow. That's setting a deadline for countries to present their revised and more ambitious commitments. What's your role in driving more ambition around climate action in the next 14 months?
Well, let me highlight that the outcome of this summit was the result, to a large extent, of the work of coalitions that were built, on which member states, together with non-state actors and agencies of the UN system, work together. Our intention is for those coalitions to continue with different shapes and different paces, depending on the number of initiatives that they have identified, and to present periodic reports on progress, because we need to scale up. We are far from the point we need. We need to scale up the level of ambition. We need new sectors to embrace these goals, and we need also to identify what are the possibilities that we have to increase innovation, to increase finance. Carlos was very rightly pointing the finger also on regulations that need to be changed. Right. Also asset owners need to move. They have started, but we need much more resources. So there is a full program, but the point that I would like to highlight is the fact that we need to do this in partnerships. Right. There is full recognition that no government alone would be able to deal with this issue. No country alone would be able.
And Lise, Kingo, what can the private sector bring to the talks in the next 14 months? We've seen some good momentum, some ambition from a number of companies. Maybe not enough, but what does the future hold?
Well, first of all, of course, we would like even more companies to join the climate movement and the 1.5 campaign. But I think that what we are seeing at the moment is great engagement and great, innovation spirit from many companies and real willingness to engage in the coalitions that the ambassador is referring to. So I think that what should happen going forward is that more ambition loops are created at a national level, where companies join governments in working out how they can inspire each other to make the energy transition a reality, country by country. I think this sort of practical way of working together, inspiring each other, governments making sure that the right regulatory framework is there to drive the energy transition, while companies offer their innovative ideas, their progressivity to sort of up the ambitions at a national level. And I think that will be really exciting to see when we will look at the next generation climate plans. We need really close cooperation between businesses and governments to be even more ambitious and sort of drive clear activities together going forward.
Thank you. And Mr. Salle, Iberdrola has supported responsible climate policy in Spain and in Europe as well. What advice would you like to share with companies looking at supporting more ambitious climate policies?
As an example to counteract other positions. The rephrase that saying that there is no point to win if you don't know where are you going. So those that have not anticipated disruption in the past have disappeared. For instance, those that didn't anticipate the development of digital photography or digital platforms have disappeared. And those that are not anticipating the need of decarbonization of the economy will disappear sooner than later.
Well, that's a very good point, and thank you for introducing some Seneca as well to our discussion. Lise Kingo, here's a question that's come in live while we've been on air. A question about how the UN Global Compact local networks will be involved in the 1.5 campaign going forwards. Are they encouraging members to join?
Well, they absolutely are. And I'm just coming back from Lisbon, Portugal, where the local network there in Spain and Portugal had organized a big event to promote the 1.5 campaign. 23 companies were on stage, signing in public. It was great to see a variety of large and small companies. And this is happening across the world in global compacts, close to 70 local networks.
Right.
So now we are concentrating very much to have more companies join the campaign up to the COP in Spain, COP25. Going forward towards COP26, we are launching what we call the Global Impact Initiative at Compact that focus on assisting companies and inspiring companies to set more ambitious targets on the SDGs in general, on gender, and of course on climate 1.5. So the whole next year is also going to be about all our local networks, liaising with companies on the ground, supporting companies to be able to sign up to the 1.5 campaign. So we hope that this is a snowball that has started now and will grow bigger and bigger going forward, and again create a real tipping point and a new normal for what is expected by business, and definitely what the UN is recommending, not least based on the IPCC report.
Thank you. And for you, Ambassador, the final word, I think. You've delivered an extraordinary momentum at the Secretary General's Climate Action Summit. We're on our way to Madrid very soon for COP25, and then looking ahead to COP26 in Glasgow. How are you feeling about this race? Is it a race we can win? How confident are you that the winds of change are now moving in the right direction?
Well, I think we had a very good start, but certainly we are not yet there. And in the next coming months, it's going to be critical to keep the momentum, to continue to build the partnership I was mentioning. But we also need to be very clear. Major emitters, whether governmental or non-governmental, are not on board yet, not to the extent they need. So the strategy of the Secretary General will concentrate on the G20 members and some of the very difficult sectors that still need to do much more. The not difficult sector, the sectors that have higher emissions. I think we need to do that. For the time being, we have seen movement, and we have seen the smaller countries to take the leadership, even though they are the less responsible of the problem. Now we need the medium and big emitters to come up. I think it is going to be very, very important also that we understand that adaptation is also quite important, not only reducing emissions. At the summit, we were able to make a significant step. There are resources which are going to be mobilized, but that would be also a priority for us in the coming months. Remember that by the end of next year, member states need to come to the COP26 with enhanced national determined contribution. And we are aiming at decarbonization before the middle of the century. That means a reduction of emissions of almost half of the actual emissions before 2030. To achieve that, we have only 10 years, 11 years.
Yeah.
So the sense of urgency needs to be very much at the center of our work.
Well, thank you, Ambassador de Alba, for your leadership. Lise Kingo from the UN Global Compact, Mr. Carlos Salle from Iberdrola. Thank you all for your leadership and insights. We've heard many great examples of how leaders in the private sector are supporting climate action. We've seen the business case in ensuring their companies are fit for the future. And what we need now is more examples of how this leadership translates to concrete sector strategies with clear government policies that support these actions. We encourage all of you listening in today to join us at COP25 in just a few weeks' time. Our team is preparing various business events, and stay tuned for more information on our website in the coming days and weeks. We'll also share with you a business guide for COP25. Together we can make the next COP one of the most impactful yet, getting the world back on track when it comes to climate change. We look forward to meeting many of you in Madrid, as well as in the lead up to COP26 in Glasgow. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lise.
Thank you, Dan.